The branches of the whispering forest swayed gently, their bioluminescent leaves casting an ethereal glow across Nyla's face. As a Valerian warrior, she moved through the ancient trees with practiced ease, her body in perfect harmony with the sacred environment she had sworn to protect. The pulsating flora responded to her presence, dimming slightly as she passed, acknowledging her as one of their guardians. Her energy spear hummed softly at her back, its crystalline core pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The elder's words echoed in her mind. The intruder violates our most sacred law. He brings foreign technology to the whispering forest. The balance must be restored. The command was absolute, and Nyla had never questioned the wisdom of the tribal council. As their finest tracker and warrior, she had been entrusted with this holy mission. The alien, the human, had to be eliminated. For 3 days, she had tracked him through the dense undergrowth. The outsider was clever, far more resourceful than any intruder she had hunted before. He moved with purpose, setting false trails and doubling back in patterns that suggested military training. Yet, he couldn't fully mask his foreign presence in a forest that whispered his location to her through subtle shifts in energy patterns and disturbed vegetation. Miles away, Marcus Reeves crouched beside a fallen log, carefully adjusting the small scanner in his hands. The device's screen flickered with weak power, displaying a rudimentary map of his surroundings. As the sole survivor of the exploration vessel Horizon, he had salvaged what equipment he could from the wreckage. The ship's mysterious destruction still haunted him. One moment they were conducting a standard survey of the uninhabited moon. The next their systems had failed catastrophically, sending them plummeting toward the surface. 6 crew members dead. Communications array destroyed. No way to call for help. The scanner beeped softly, and Marcus frowned at the reading. "That can't be right," he muttered, tapping the display. According to the data, there were at least 3 distinct energy signatures in his vicinity. One was clearly his own equipment, another matched the pattern he'd come to associate with his persistent hunter, but the third signature was something altogether different, more sophisticated, with a pulsating rhythm that suggested advanced technology. Not his, not belonging to the tribal warrior tracking him. Someone else was watching them both. He packed away the scanner and moved deeper into the forest, keeping low and using the luminescent flora as cover. His original mission, simple reconnaissance of an allegedly uninhabited moon, had transformed into a desperate fight for survival. Fix the long-range communicator. Signal for extraction. Document what happened here. And most importantly, avoid the native warrior who seemed determined to put a spear through his chest. But now, with evidence of another presence, the parameters had changed. What if there was a connection between this unknown observer and the destruction of his ship? What if the native hunter was not the primary threat? Night fell across the whispering forest, intensifying the natural glow of the vegetation. Nyla moved like a shadow through the canopy, her body painted with natural pigments that camouflage her against the phosphorescent bark. Below, the human had made camp in a small clearing, partially sheltered by a massive fallen tree. From her vantage point, she could see him working meticulously on a small device, his face illuminated by its dim light. This was the perfect opportunity. The human was distracted, focused entirely on his technology. Nyla silently climbed higher, positioning herself directly above him. Her fingers curled around her energy spear, feeling the weapon come alive at her touch. The crystalline tip began to glow with accumulated power, ready to pierce through any material with devastating force. She measured the distance with her eyes. 20 feet down. A simple throw. One motion and her mission would be complete. The elders would welcome her back as a hero, the protector who eliminated the threat to their sacred forest. Nyla took a deep breath, centering herself as she had been taught since childhood. The human remained oblivious, still tinkering with his device. She raised her spear, muscles tensing for the killing throw. And then everything changed. "Look out!" Marcus shouted suddenly in galactic trade language, lunging for a small device at his belt. He didn't attempt to flee or defend himself. Instead, He slammed his palm against the device, triggering a localized disruption field that crackled into existence around him. In the same instant, the air around Nyla sizzled with energy. 3 small, previously invisible drones materialized from their cloaked state, metallic bodies gleaming in the forest glow as they opened fire on her position. Energy bolts tore through the branches where she perched, sending splintered wood and burning leaves raining down. Instinct saved her. Nyla leapt from her position a split second before it was obliterated, twisting in midair to avoid the barrage of energy fire. Her spear came alive in her hands, its defensive protocols activating as she deflected a bolt that would have struck her torso. She landed heavily on a lower branch, which cracked under the impact of her body. As she fell, the branch gave way completely. Nyla plummeted toward the forest floor, managing to grab onto another limb momentarily before losing her grip. The human, Marcus, was directly below her, his disruption field still crackling around him. Without hesitation, he deactivated the field and lunged forward, breaking her fall as they both tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The drones adjusted their firing pattern, concentrating on both targets now. Marcus rolled away from Nyla, drawing a small sidearm from his belt. "Not me," he shouted, firing at the nearest drone. "They're hunting you." Nyla recovered instantly, decades of combat training taking over. She whirled her spear in a defensive pattern, creating a barrier of energy that deflected several more shots. One of the drones swooped lower, attempting to get around her guard, but she anticipated the movement and thrust upward, her spear's tip slicing through its metallic shell. The disabled drone crashed into the underbrush, its lights flickering and dying. Marcus managed to hit a second drone with a well-placed shot, sending it spiraling into a tree trunk. But the third proved more agile, maintaining its distance while continuing to fire. A bolt grazed Nyla's shoulder, burning through her armor and searing the skin beneath. She hissed in pain, but maintained her stance. "We need to move," Marcus called out, gesturing toward a denser section of the forest. "More will come." For a moment, Nyla hesitated, her mission and the humans' unexpected actions creating conflict in her mind. The third drone abruptly changed tactics, firing not at them, but at the ground between them. The soil erupted, releasing a cloud of fine particles that immediately began to glow with an unnatural light. "Tracking dust," Marcus shouted, his eyes widening in recognition. "Run, now!" The decision was made for her. Nyla sprinted into the undergrowth, aware of the human following close behind. The surviving drone pursued them, continuing to fire sporadically, but the dense canopy provided some cover as they fled deeper into the forest. They ran for what felt like hours, changing direction frequently, wading through shallow streams to confuse any tracking systems. Eventually, Nyla spotted what they needed, a massive hollow tree, its interior chamber accessible through a gap in its ancient trunk. She veered toward it, Marcus following her lead without question. The space inside was larger than it appeared from outside, the interior walls glowing with a soft blue bioluminescence that provided just enough light to see. Both of them collapsed against opposite sides of the chamber, breathing heavily from their escape. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sounds were their labored breathing and the distant, ethereal music of the forest, a complex symphony of rustling leaves and vibrating fungi that never truly fell silent. Nyla was the first to break the standoff. "You knew," she said, her voice low and accusing. Her hand remained tight around her spear, though she kept it lowered. "You knew we were being watched." Marcus nodded, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I've been detecting unusual energy signatures for days. Not yours, not mine. Something else entirely." He reached slowly into his pocket and withdrew the small scanner, placing it on the ground between them. "These readings show at least 3 distinct technological signatures in the forest. One is my equipment. One matches the energy signature of your weapons and technology. The third," he tapped the display. "The third doesn't match anything in my database." "Impossible," Nyla replied, though a seed of doubt had taken root. The Whispering Forest is sacred ground. No one enters without the Elder's knowledge. Someone has. Marcus gestured to her injured shoulder. Those were my drones. That wasn't my technology. And they fired on you first, not me. Nyla's mind raced, trying to make sense of this new information. The Elders had been explicit. The human was the only intruder, the only threat to the forest. Yet she had seen the drones with her own eyes, felt their weapon burn her flesh. And the human had warned her, had even put himself at risk to break her fall. "Why would you warn me?" she asked, suspicion still evident in her tone. "I was about to kill you." Marcus gave a tired smile. "Self-preservation, partly. I figured if those drones killed you, I'd be next." And he hesitated. "Something's not right here. My ship didn't crash by accident. The systems were sabotaged, but not by your people. The technology signatures don't match. I think there's something bigger going on, something that involves both our peoples." He adjusted his position, wincing slightly. "Look, I don't expect you to trust me. But right now, we're both targets. If those drones were specifically tracking you, as the targeting pattern suggested, then whoever deployed them wants you dead more than they want me dead. The question is, why?" Nyla's gaze dropped to the scanner, its display showing the 3 distinct energy signatures Marcus had mentioned. The evidence was difficult to dismiss, yet contradicted everything she had been taught to believe. "The Elders would never mislead us," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Recent memories surfaced, hushed arguments among the tribal leaders, increased restrictions on movement within the forest, warriors who questioned certain decisions disappearing on special missions. Small inconsistencies that she had dismissed out of loyalty. "Perhaps they don't know," Marcus suggested. "Or perhaps not all of them are involved. Either way, we're both in danger as long as we remain separated. Together, we might have a chance." Nyla took a deep breath, the pain in her shoulder a constant reminder of the attack. "A temporary alliance," she conceded finally, "until we understand what's happening. But make no mistake, human, if this is some trick, I will complete my original mission." Marcus nodded. "Fair enough. And the name's Marcus. Marcus Reeves." "Nyla," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "High Sentinel of the Eastern Valerians." "Well, High Sentinel Nyla," Marcus said, carefully standing up. "I suggest we rest here for a few hours, then move before dawn. Those drones will have tracking capabilities beyond the dust they deployed. We need to put more distance between us and this location." Nyla nodded reluctantly, maintaining her distance, but allowing herself to relax marginally. The night would be long, filled with uncertainty and unanswered questions. But for now, at least, they had a fragile truce, and perhaps the beginning of understanding their shared predicament. Dawn broke over the whispering forest, filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns of light. Nyla awoke instantly, her warrior's senses immediately alert. Across the hollow chamber, Marcus was already awake, repacking his equipment with practiced efficiency. "We need to move east," he said without preamble. "My scanner picked up increased activity to the west, possibly more drones or other automated systems searching for us." Nyla rose fluidly, ignoring the dull throb from her injured shoulder. "East leads deeper into the forest, toward the Crystal Falls. The terrain becomes more treacherous." "Good," Marcus replied. "The more difficult the terrain, the harder it will be for those drones to navigate. Plus, I'm picking up some unusual energy readings from that direction. Might be worth investigating." They emerged cautiously from their shelter, Nyla taking the lead as they began their journey eastward. The forest grew denser with each passing mile, the vegetation more exotic and unpredictable. Massive flowers snapped shut as they passed, while fields of sensitive fungi retracted into the soil, creating rippling patterns that spread outward like waves. "Stay close," Nyla warned as they approached a section where the ground seemed to undulate slightly. "Breathing bogs. The soil appears solid, but liquefies when disturbed. One wrong step and you'll sink." Marcus nodded, following her exact footsteps as she navigated a narrow path through the hazardous terrain. Your people have remarkable adaptations to this environment, he observed. The way you read the forest, it's beyond standard training. The Valerians don't merely live in the forest, Nyla replied, her tone softening slightly. We are part of it. From birth, we're taught to hear its whispers, to understand its rhythms. The bond goes beyond knowledge. It's a physical connection. As if to demonstrate, she placed her palm against a massive tree trunk. The bark immediately brightened around her hand, luminescent patterns spreading outward like ripples in water. The forest knows its children, she said simply. They continued in silence for a time, making good progress despite the challenging terrain. Twice, they spotted distant drones scanning the forest canopy, but managed to avoid detection by using the dense vegetation as cover. By midday, they reached a small clearing dominated by a strange structure, clearly artificial, yet partially reclaimed by the forest. Vines and luminescent fungi had invaded what appeared to be a small outpost, its metallic walls corroded and covered in vegetation. This shouldn't be here, Nyla whispered, her hand tightening around her spear. No outsider structures are permitted in the Whispering Forest, especially not this deep. Marcus approached cautiously, scanner in hand. It's old, at least a decade, based on the level of deterioration. But it was built using technology that doesn't match either of our civilizations. He examined the unusual architecture, the strange alloys used in its construction. And look at this. He pointed to a symbol etched into what remained of a doorway. A complex geometric pattern unlike anything Nyla recognized. The technology's signature matches the drones that attacked us, he continued, studying his scanner. This could be one of their forward bases. They entered the abandoned outpost carefully, finding most of the interior collapsed or completely overtaken by vegetation. In what must have once been a control room, Marcus discovered a partially intact data terminal. If I can get this working, we might find some answers, he murmured, kneeling beside the damaged console. While he worked, Nyla explored the rest of the structure, her warrior's instincts on high alert. In a back chamber, partially hidden by collapsed ceiling panels, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. The remains of a Valerian warrior, the body mummified by the forest's unique atmosphere, preserving it in a grotesque tableau. The warrior's armor bore the insignia of the Western Guard, a division that patrolled the boundaries furthest from her own territory. Marcus, she called, her voice tight. You need to see this. He joined her quickly, his expression grim as he examined the remains. The damage pattern doesn't match any weapon I'm familiar with, he noted, pointing to a precise, circular wound in the warrior's chest. Looks like some kind of directed energy weapon, but more focused than anything in Earth's arsenal. Nyla knelt beside her fallen kinsman, offering a brief prayer in her native tongue. Tenor was reported lost on patrol 2 cycles ago. The elders said he had abandoned his post, dishonored his oath. Her voice hardened. They lied. Maybe they didn't know, Marcus suggested, though his tone suggested he doubted his own words. The elders see all that happens in the forest, Nyla replied. If they claimed he deserted, they either knew the truth and concealed it, or— She didn't finish the thought, the implications too disturbing to voice. Their grim discovery was interrupted by a sudden alert from Marcus's scanner. We've got incoming, he said urgently. Multiple signatures converging on our position. They hastily exited the outpost, Nyla leading them toward a dense thicket of thorny vines that would slow any pursuit. As they ran, a high-pitched whine filled the air, the unmistakable sound of drone propulsion systems. There! Marcus pointed upward, where 3 combat drones, larger than those that had attacked earlier, were descending through gaps in the canopy. Unlike the previous attackers, these moved with precision that suggested direct control rather than automated programming. Someone's piloting them, he called to Nyla as they ducked beneath a massive fallen tree. These aren't autonomous. The drones opened fire, energy bolts carving smoking channels through the vegetation around them. Nyla pushed Marcus down as a bolt passed dangerously close to his head, scorching the air where he had stood a moment before. We can't outrun them, she said, readying her spear. We fight. Marcus nodded grimly, drawing his sidearm. On your mark. Nyla analyzed the drone's flight patterns for a moment, then gave a sharp nod. They broke cover simultaneously, each targeting a different drone. Nyla's spear unleashed a concentrated blast of energy that caught the first drone squarely, sending its smoldering remains crashing to the forest floor. Marcus fired 3 rapid shots at the second, the third hitting a critical component and causing the drone to spiral out of control. The third drone, perhaps recognizing the threat, gained altitude and changed tactics. Instead of energy weapons, it released a swarm of smaller objects that began to unfold in midair. Hunter-seekers, Marcus shouted in warning. Don't let them touch you. The tiny machines, each no larger than a finger, darted through the air with incredible speed, homing in on their targets. Nyla swung her spear in wide arcs, its energy field disrupting several of the hunter-seekers. Others, she smashed from the air with precise movements, their delicate mechanisms no match for the force of her blows. Marcus was having less success, his weapon ineffective against such small, fast-moving targets. One of the hunter-seekers latched onto his arm, mechanical appendages piercing through his jacket toward the skin beneath. He cried out, trying to dislodge it. Without hesitation, Nyla leapt to his side, precisely severing the machine with the edge of her spear before it could inject whatever toxin or tracking device it carried. More of the tiny attackers converged on them, forcing them back-to-back in a defensive position. The controller drone, Nyla said between strikes. Can you hit it from? Here. Marcus steadied his arm, aiming carefully despite the chaotic swarm around them. One shot, he muttered, focusing. The weapon discharged with a sharp crack, and the hovering drone exploded in a shower of components. Immediately, the hunter-seekers froze in midair, then fell to the ground, inert without their control signal. For a moment, they stood panting in the sudden silence, the aftermath of battle settling around them. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, the usual background sounds temporarily hushed. Thank you, Marcus said simply, examining the torn sleeve where the hunter-seeker had attached. Nyla nodded, then stiffened as she sensed movement in the undergrowth. She raised her spear, but relaxed slightly when a small, 6-legged forest creature emerged, its scaled body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Shokin, sacred to her people, approached cautiously, sniffing the air with its sensitive antennae. It's all right, she told Marcus, who had tensed at her reaction. It's a Shokin, a guardian spirit of the forest. The creature circled them curiously, then approached Marcus directly, rising on its hind legs to study him more closely. To Nyla's surprise, it showed no fear or aggression toward the human. Unusual behavior for a species notoriously wary of strangers. I think it likes you, she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. Is that normal? No, Nyla admitted. The Shokin avoid outsiders. They're considered excellent judges of character and intention, if one approaches willingly. She didn't finish the thought, but her posture relaxed further. The Shokin eventually lost interest and scampered away into the undergrowth. They watched it disappear, a moment of tranquility in their otherwise desperate situation. We should move, Marcus said finally. That firefight will attract attention. They continued eastward, pushing deeper into the forest. As they traveled, a tentative trust began to form between them. During brief rest periods, they exchanged information about their respective worlds, cultures, and personal histories. Marcus spoke of Earth, of its sprawling cities and diverse ecosystems, of humanity's relentless expansion into the stars. He explained his mission, a routine survey of supposedly uninhabited moons in this sector, gathering data for potential future outposts. We didn't know this moon was inhabited, he assured her. All preliminary scans showed no signs of advanced civilization. If we had known about the Valerians, contact protocols would have been followed. The Elders have technology that shields our presence, Nyla explained. It is how we have remained undisturbed for generations. She hesitated, then added, or so I was taught. She told him of Valerian society, their deep connection to the forest, their clan structure, the sacred duties of warriors like herself. She spoke of the increasing restrictions imposed by certain elders in recent years, the disappearance of those who questioned authority too openly. "I never doubted their wisdom," she admitted. "Not until now." As night fell again, they made camp beneath a massive shelf fungus, its broad canopy providing shelter from the light rain that had begun to fall. The luminescent spores released by the fungus created a peaceful glow around their temporary haven. "Tomorrow we reach the Crystal Falls," Nyla said, checking her spear's energy reserves. "The radiation there interferes with most technology. We might find temporary safety." Marcus nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "These attacks are too coordinated, too persistent. Whoever is behind them has significant resources and seems determined to eliminate us, particularly you." "Why me?" Nyla wondered aloud. "I'm a skilled warrior, but not irreplaceable. Why target me specifically?" "Maybe it's not you personally," Marcus suggested. "Maybe it's what you represent, or what you might discover." He gestured to the forest around them. "Your people have a unique bond with this environment. If someone wanted to exploit it, for resources, for power, they'd want to eliminate those most attuned to the forest first." The implication hung heavy between them, that elements within her own society might be complicit in whatever was happening. Nyla wanted to reject the idea outright, but the evidence was becoming difficult to ignore. "Rest," she said finally. "I'll take first watch." Marcus nodded, settling back against the fungal trunk. Soon, his breathing deepened into sleep, the exhaustion of their ordeal finally catching up with him. Nyla watched him for a moment, this strange human who had upended everything she thought she knew. The mission to eliminate him now seemed distant, irrelevant in the face of greater threats and uncomfortable truths. She had been taught that humans were dangerous destroyers, yet this one had saved her life multiple times. He had treated her with respect, had listened to her knowledge of the forest, had fought alongside her without hesitation. The forest whispered around her, its familiar sounds both comforting and now somehow ominous. What other truths had been hidden from her? What secrets lay beneath the surface of her world, her beliefs? Tomorrow would bring them to the Crystal Falls, and perhaps closer to answers. For now, she maintained her vigilant watch, her resolve strengthening with each passing hour. Whatever the truth, she would face it, even if it meant challenging everything she had ever believed. The Crystal Falls emerged from a mist like a vision from another world. Massive structures of transparent crystal rose hundreds of feet into the air, their faceted surfaces capturing and refracting the forest's bioluminescence into spectacular prisms of color. Water flowed over and through the crystalline formations, creating a symphony of sound that resonated through the clearing. "It's incredible," Marcus whispered, awe evident in his voice as they paused at the edge of the vast basin that surrounded the falls. Nyla nodded, her expression softening as she gazed upon one of her people's most sacred sites. "The waters here are said to reveal truth, to wash away deception and show things as they truly are." She gestured to the fine mist that hung in the air around the falls. "The particles in the water interfere with most technology. Your scanner won't function properly here, nor will the drone's tracking systems." They made their way carefully down to the basin, the rocky terrain slick with moisture. As they approached the falls, the air grew thick with mist, and true to Nyla's word, Marcus's scanner began to emit erratic beeps before failing entirely. "Perfect place to regroup," he said, powering down the useless device to conserve its battery. "We should be able to rest here safely for a while." They found shelter in a small cave behind one of the smaller falls, the rushing water providing a natural curtain that concealed the entrance. The interior was dry and surprisingly warm, heated by geothermal activity beneath the stone floor. As they unpacked their meager supplies, Marcus took the opportunity to examine a small object he had retrieved from the abandoned outpost, a damaged data storage device that might contain information about the mysterious third party. "If I can get this working," he explained, carefully dismantling the device, We might learn who's behind the attacks. While he worked, Nyla ventured out to gather edible fungi and roots that grew abundantly near the falls. The familiar task helped center her thoughts, which had been in turmoil since their discoveries. By the time she returned, Marcus had made progress with the damaged device. "I've managed to recover some data fragments," he said, showing her a small projection that hovered above the device. "Most of it is corrupted, but there are references to something called Project Luminance and repeated mentions of energy extraction from the forest ecosystem." Nyla frowned, studying the fragmented images and text. "This symbol," she said, pointing to a geometric pattern that appeared multiple times. "I've seen it before on ceremonial robes worn by Elder Sorix and his followers. I always assumed it was a traditional design." "Sorix? One of your tribal leaders?" "Yes. He leads the Guardian faction, those charged with protecting the forest's purity from outside influence." Her expression darkened. "He's also the one who assigned me the mission to eliminate you." Marcus absorbed this information, pieces beginning to connect. So Sorix and his faction may be working with these outsiders, while using you and other warriors to eliminate witnesses or potential threats. He gestured to the data fragments. "According to this, they've been extracting some kind of energy from the forest for years, something unique to this ecosystem. The forest's lifeblood," Nyla whispered, horror dawning on her face. "They're harvesting the very essence that connects all living things here." She paced the small cave, anger building. "This would explain the changes I've noticed. Areas of the forest growing dim, plants withering without apparent cause, the sacred animals becoming scarce. And if you or others reported these changes, you might be sent on a mission from which you wouldn't return," Marcus added grimly. "Like Tenor," Nyla agreed, remembering the remains they had found. Her hands clenched into fists. "Sorix has betrayed everything we stand for, everything we believe. The forest is not a resource to be harvested. It is our home, our protector, our ancestor." Marcus studied the remaining data. Based on these energy readings, they're operating a much larger facility somewhere in the forest, probably well hidden. That would be the source of the operation. "I know where it must be," Nyla said suddenly. "The forbidden caverns beneath the Mountain of Whispers. They've been declared off-limits for generations, supposedly because of dangerous predators. But the mountain sits at the heart of the forest's energy network. If someone wanted to tap into the forest's power, that would be the ideal location. Can you get us there?" Nyla nodded grimly. "It's a 2-day journey from here, through the most dangerous parts of the forest. But yes, I know the way." "Then that's our target," Marcus said. "We find the facility, gather concrete evidence of what's happening, then decide our next move." "And if Sorix is there?" Nyla asked, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Then you'll have to decide where your true loyalty lies, with the elders who betrayed you, or with the forest you've sworn to protect." The next morning, they set out from the Crystal Falls, heading north toward the distant Mountain of Whispers. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous. Massive carnivorous plants lurked among the regular vegetation, while the very ground became unstable in places, quaking with subterranean activity. Nyla led them through the hazards with practiced skill, her lifetime of training evident in every decision, every movement. Marcus followed her lead without question, trusting her knowledge of this deadly environment. By late afternoon, they encountered fresh evidence of their pursuers. The remains of forest creatures killed by energy weapons, scorched vegetation indicating the passage of drones. They were being hunted more aggressively now, their destination perhaps anticipated. "We need to move faster," Nyla urged as they paused to assess their surroundings. "They're hurting us, trying to force us into a specific path." "Agreed," Marcus said, "but rushing could lead us straight into a trap. We need to be—" His words cut off as a brilliant light suddenly erupted from the forest canopy ahead of them, accompanied by a deafening crack of energy discharge. They dove for cover as the light intensified, momentarily blinding them both. When their vision cleared, they found themselves facing a new threat. Not drones this time, but a squad of armed figures in advanced environmental suits. Their helmets concealed their features, but their movements were fluid, purposeful. These were trained soldiers, not automated systems. "Run!" Marcus shouted, pulling Nyla toward a dense thicket as energy bolts tore through the space they had occupied moments before. They fled through the undergrowth, the pursuit close behind them. Nyla led them toward a section of forest where massive thorny vines created a natural barrier, hoping to slow their hunters. As they reached the vines, Marcus turned to provide covering fire, his weapon's charge nearly depleted. "Go," he urged Nyla. "I'll hold them off." Instead of continuing, Nyla grabbed his arm and pulled him after her. "Together," she insisted, guiding him through a narrow gap in the thorny barrier that would be invisible to anyone unfamiliar with the forest's secrets. They emerged on the other side, just as their pursuers reached the vine wall. The soldiers began cutting through with energy blades, but the process was slow. The vines regenerated almost as quickly as they were cut, their defensive mechanisms activated by the disturbance. "That won't hold them long," Nyla said, already moving again. "The River of Shadows is our best chance now. It's less than a mile ahead." They pushed on, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm them both. The forest had grown darker, the bioluminescence dimmer in this region, another sign of the energy extraction Nyla now recognized. The River of Shadows lived up to its name, a wide waterway of absolute blackness that absorbed rather than reflected light, creating the illusion of a vast void cutting through the forest. Strange currents moved beneath its surface, occasionally breaking into patterns that hinted at intelligent movement. "We cross here," Nyla said, leading Marcus to a narrow section where massive tree roots had formed a natural bridge. "Is it safe?" he asked, eyeing the unnaturally dark water with apprehension. "The river is alive," Nyla replied, cryptically. "It judges those who seek to cross. If your intentions are pure, it will permit passage." Before Marcus could question further, the sound of their pursuers growing closer forced the decision. They began to cross carefully, balancing on the twisted roots that spanned the mysterious waterway. Halfway across, the roots beneath them suddenly trembled. Marcus stumbled, nearly falling into the dark water before Nyla caught his arm, steadying him. The surface of the river began to ripple, dark tendrils of liquid rising up toward them. "Don't move," Nyla whispered. "Let it touch you. Let it see." The tendrils reached them, wrapping gently around their ankles, their wrists, cool and strangely comforting despite their alien nature. Marcus forced himself to remain still, fighting every instinct to pull away. After what seemed an eternity, the tendrils retreated, and the roots beneath them stabilized once more. Nyla exhaled slowly. "It accepts us. Hurry now." They completed the crossing just as their pursuers reached the opposite bank. One of the soldiers attempted to follow, stepping onto the root bridge. Immediately, the roots twisted violently, throwing the soldier into the dark water. There was no splash, no cry. The river simply closed over the figure as if they had never existed. The remaining soldiers halted at the edge, clearly unwilling to risk the same fate. One raised a communication device, presumably calling for reinforcements or alternate transportation. "They'll find another way across," Marcus said as they moved away from the river's edge. "But we bought some time." Nyla nodded grimly. "We're close to the mountain now. By nightfall, we'll reach the entrance to the forbidden caverns." As dusk descended, the forest grew eerily quiet. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures fell silent, as if the very ecosystem held its breath in anticipation. The mountain of whispers loomed before them, its jagged silhouette piercing the darkening sky. Unlike the rest of the forest, no bioluminescence adorned its slopes. The rock face remained stubbornly dark, a void in the otherwise glowing landscape. "There's no light," Marcus observed, his voice hushed. "Everywhere else in the forest glows, but not here." "It's getting worse," Nyla replied, her expression troubled. "When I was a child, even the mountain shimmered with life energy. Now," she gestured to the barren slopes. "They're killing it, draining the very essence from the heart of our world." They approached cautiously, Nyla leading them along a barely visible trail that wound around the mountain's base. The entrance to the forbidden caverns was concealed behind a curtain of hanging vines, their once vibrant glow now reduced to a sickly flicker. The elders always claimed these caverns were home to deadly predators, Nyla explained as they paused before the entrance. Sacred ground where only the most spiritually prepared could venture. Now I understand the real reason for the prohibition. Marcus scanned the area, noting subtle signs of regular passage, flattened vegetation, faint boot prints in the softer soil. People come and go from here frequently, he confirmed. They slipped through the vine curtain into a vast tunnel that descended into the mountain's depths. Unlike the forest outside, the cavern walls pulsed with an unnatural light, not the soft bioluminescence of the forest, but a harsh, artificial glow that emanated from crystalline formations embedded in the rock. The crystals themselves seemed distressed, their light fluctuating erratically. The crystals are part of the forest's nervous system, Nyla whispered, running her fingers gently over one of the formations. They connect every living thing in the ecosystem. They're in pain. They move deeper into the cavern system, following the increasingly unnatural glow. The tunnels gradually transitioned from natural formations to constructed passages with obvious signs of excavation and reinforcement. Eventually, they emerged onto a viewing platform overlooking an enormous underground chamber. Both froze at the sight before them. The cavern had been transformed into a massive industrial complex. Enormous machinery pulsed with harvested energy, connected to the chamber walls by countless tubes and cables that penetrated deep into the living rock. Workers in environmental suits moved between the machines, monitoring gauges and adjusting controls. At the center of it all stood a towering structure, a device that hummed with accumulated power, its core so bright it was painful to look at directly. They're tapping directly into the heart of the forest, Nyla breathed, horror evident in her voice. This will kill everything, not just the plants and animals, but the consciousness that binds it all together. Marcus studied the operation with growing concern. This technology, it's beyond anything Earth has developed. And look at the workers. They're not all the same species. He pointed to subtle differences in height, movement patterns, and suit designs. This is a multi-species operation. Someone's bringing together different alien technologies for this extraction process. They retreated from the edge, moving to a more concealed position to discuss their next steps. We need to document this, Marcus said, adjusting his scanner to record despite the interference from the energy harvesting. And then we need to disable it, or at least disrupt the operation long enough for help to arrive. What help? Nyla asked. My people are either complicit or deceived. Your ship is destroyed. Marcus hesitated, then revealed something he had kept to himself. Before my ship went down, we managed to send a partial distress signal. It wasn't enough for a precise location, but it should have alerted Earth's outpost in this sector. If they received it, they'll be searching for us, but they need a stronger signal to pinpoint our location. And if Sorix is working with these invaders, he would have made sure no such signal could leave the forest, Nyla concluded. She gestured to the complex below. That central tower, it has to be generating some kind of suppression field. That's why your communication equipment can't penetrate the atmosphere. If we could disable it, even temporarily, their planning was interrupted by a familiar voice. I'm disappointed, Nyla. I expected better from my finest warrior. They spun to find Elder Sorix standing a few meters away, flanked by two armed guards in the same environmental suits they had seen below. The Elder wore ceremonial robes adorned with symbols that matched those on the data storage device they had recovered. His expression was not angry, but rather regretful, as if genuinely saddened by her choices. Sorix, Nyla hissed, her spear instantly in hand. You betray our people, our sacred trust. For what? Power? Wealth? The Elder's expression hardened. I preserve our people, child. The forest is dying, has been dying for generations. What we do here extends its life, channels its energy in sustainable ways. Lies, Nyla spat. You're killing it faster. I've seen the darkness spreading, the life force dimming. Whatever these outsiders promised you, it was built on deception. Sorek sighed, as if explaining to a stubborn child. The dying began long before we started harvesting. This operation is merely making use of what would be lost anyway. The profit sustains our society, allows us to adapt as the forest fades. Change is inevitable, Nyla. The wise adapt. By betraying everything we stand for, she demanded. By murdering those who discovered your secret? Unfortunate necessities, Sorix replied calmly. The many must come before the few. The alliance we've built here secures our future when the forest finally expires. He turned his attention to Marcus. As for you, human, your presence is an unwelcome complication. Your kind lacked the patience for proper resource management. You would have interfered eventually. So you shot down my ship, Marcus said flatly. Murder my crew. A regrettable but necessary precaution, Sorix acknowledged. Though I admit, your survival was impressive. Almost as impressive as your ability to turn one of my most loyal warriors against me. He returned his gaze to Nyla. A final chance, child. Return to your duty. Help us secure the future of our people. Your talents are too valuable to waste. Nyla's grip tightened on her spear. The Valerians I serve would never sacrifice the forest for profit, would never murder innocents for convenience. You aren't preserving our people. You're destroying everything that makes us who we are. Sorix's expression hardened. Then you've made your choice. He gestured to the guards. Take them. The human will be processed with the others. Nyla will face tribal justice for her treason. The guards advanced, weapons raised. Nyla moved with lightning speed, her spear sweeping in a wide arc that knocked one guard off his feet. Marcus tackled the second, driving him backward into Sorix. All three tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs and ceremonial robes. Nyla dispatched her opponent with a precise strike, then turned to help Marcus. He had managed to seize the fallen guard's weapon and was struggling with Sorix, who had revealed surprising strength for his age. Run! Marcus shouted to her. Get to the central tower. I'll hold him. Not without you, Nyla insisted, pulling Sorix off Marcus with one powerful movement. The elder crashed against the cavern wall, momentarily stunned. Together, they fled deeper into the complex, alarms blaring in their wake. Red emergency lights pulsed through the tunnels as they ran, the complex coming alive with activity around them. This way, Marcus called, consulting his scanner. The central chamber should be through here. They burst through a set of heavy doors into the heart of the operation, the base of the enormous tower they had seen from above. Up close, its purpose became clear, a massive transmitter designed to broadcast harvested energy off-world while simultaneously generating a field that blocked unauthorized communications. We need to overload it, Marcus said, examining the control panels. If we reverse the energy flow, it should create a cascade failure. That would release the harvested energy back into the forest, Nyla realized, and disable their jamming field. They worked quickly, Marcus applying his technical knowledge while Nyla kept watch. The facility's security forces would be converging on their position, and time was running out. There, Marcus said finally, inputting the last command sequence. Now we need to... The doors burst open, and Sorix entered, now flanked by a full squad of armed guards. His ceremonial robes were torn from the earlier struggle, revealing a fitted bodysuit. Underneath, that incorporated the same alien technology they had seen throughout the complex. Enough, the elder commanded. Step away from the controls. You have no idea what you're tampering with. We know exactly what we're doing, Nyla replied, positioning herself protectively in front of Marcus as he continued working behind her. Returning what was stolen. Healing what you've broken. Sorix's face contorted with rage. Foolish child. The energy concentration in that tower is enough to level half the forest if released improperly. You'll destroy everything. He's lying, Marcus murmured to Nyla. The system has safety protocols. The energy will dissipate gradually, painful for their operation, but not catastrophic. Nyla nodded, raising her spear. Last chance, Sorix. Order your people to stand down. Face proper judgment from the United Tribes. The elder laughed bitterly. There will be no judgment. The tribes follow where I lead. They depend on the resources this operation provides. Without it, our society collapses. Better to rebuild with honor than survive through betrayal, Nyla replied. Sorix signaled his guards. Take them, alive if possible, but stop them at all costs. The squad advanced, weapons raised. Nyla's spear flared to life, its energy blade extending to full combat configuration. Behind her, Marcus worked frantically at the controls, racing to complete the overload sequence before they were overwhelmed. The first guard reached Nyla, firing a disabling bolt that she deflected with practiced ease. Her counterstrike was devastating, her spear slicing through his weapon and armor in one fluid motion. More guards converged, forcing her into a defensive position as she protected Marcus's work. The battle was chaotic, confined within the cramped space of the control room. Nyla fought with all the skill and training of her warrior heritage, each movement precise despite the overwhelming odds. 2 guards fell, then a third, but more kept coming. A bolt grazed her side, searing through her armor and drawing a hiss of pain. Another struck her leg, causing her to stumble momentarily before regaining her stance. She was fighting brilliantly, but couldn't hold them all back indefinitely. Marcus, she called, deflecting another attack. Almost there, he replied, his fingers flying over the controls. Just a few more seconds. Sorix, seeing the impending failure of his guards, drew a weapon of his own, an ornate device that hummed with concentrated energy. Enough of this, he snarled, taking aim at Marcus. Nyla saw the threat and reacted instinctively. She threw herself into the path of Sorix's weapon just as it discharged. The energy blast struck her squarely in the chest, sending her crashing backward into the control panel beside Marcus. Nyla! Marcus cried, catching her as she collapsed. Despite the severity of her wound, Nyla's focus remained clear. With the last of her strength, she thrust her spear forward, its energy blade piercing Sorix's chest with unerring accuracy. The elder's eyes widened in shock and pain as he fell, the weapon slipping from his grasp. The remaining guards hesitated, their leader fallen, uncertainty replacing their earlier confidence. It's done, Marcus said, supporting Nyla with one arm while activating the final sequence with his free hand. Overload initiated. The tower began to vibrate, its hum rising to a painful whine as the energy containment systems reversed. Alarms blared throughout the complex, and the guards broke ranks, fleeing the imminent catastrophe. Marcus lifted Nyla, carrying her toward an emergency exit he'd spotted earlier. She was still conscious, but barely, her breathing labored and her normally vibrant skin pale from trauma. Stay with me, he urged as they made their escape, the complex destabilizing around them. We're almost out. The tunnel shook with increasing violence as the tower's overload cascaded through connected systems. Support structures began to fail, sections of ceiling collapsing behind them as they fled. Marcus carried Nyla through the chaos, following emergency lighting toward the surface. They emerged from the caverns just as the ground beneath them bucked violently. A massive energy discharge erupted from the mountain, not in a destructive explosion as Sorix had threatened, but as a wave of pure life force that spread outward through the forest. Wherever it passed, the natural bioluminescence intensified, plants visibly straightening and reaching upward, the entire ecosystem seeming to sigh in collective relief. It's beautiful, Nyla whispered, her voice weak but filled with wonder as she witnessed the forest's rebirth. Marcus set her down gently at a safe distance, examining her injury with growing concern. The wound was severe. Sorix's weapon had caused damage beyond anything his limited medical supplies could address. We need to get you to your people, he said, applying a makeshift bandage. They'll have healers who can help. Nyla shook her head slightly. The nearest village is too far. And after what happened, she placed her hand over his. The forest will help me now. It recognizes what we've done. As if in response to her words, the ground around them began to pulse with intensified light. Small plants curled toward her, their luminescence brightening. Spores drifted down from the canopy above, settling on her wound and beginning to glow with healing energy. "The forest's gift," she explained, a faint smile touching her lips. "Life for life." Marcus activated his scanner, which was now functioning properly with the jamming field disabled. "I'm picking up a signal," he said, hope rising in his voice. "Earth frequencies. They must have been searching all along, just couldn't penetrate the interference." He quickly configured the device to respond, sending their coordinates and a brief status report. Within moments, a reply came through. A rescue ship was already in orbit, having detected the massive energy surge from the destroyed facility. They would reach their position within hours. "They're coming," he told Nyla, taking her hand. "Just hold on." Her eyes met his, clear despite her pain. "What happens now? Your people will want to know everything about this place, this incident." "I'll tell them the truth," Marcus promised. "About Sorix's operation, about the forest's consciousness, about how it needs protection, not exploitation." He squeezed her hand gently. "And about the Valerian warrior who saved my life and restored balance to her world." "They may not listen," she warned. "Humans have their own Sorixes, those who see only resources to be harvested, profit to be gained." "Then we'll make them listen," Marcus replied with determination. "Together. Your people need to know what happened here too, about the betrayal, but also about the forest's resilience, about how it can heal if given the chance." Around them, the forest continued its awakening, colors growing more vibrant, sounds returning as creatures emerged from hiding. The mountain of whispers itself began to shimmer faintly, the first signs of life returning to its slopes after years of exploitation. "I was sent to hunt you," Nyla said softly, a hint of wonder in her voice. "Instead, we saved each other. Perhaps there is wisdom in that, a lesson for both our peoples." Marcus nodded, looking out at the rejuvenating forest. Hunter and hunted, predator and prey. Maybe those distinctions matter less than we think. In the end, we're all just trying to survive, to find our place in something larger than ourselves. "And now?" Nyla asked, her strength gradually returning as the forest's healing energies worked through her system. "Now we build something new," Marcus replied. "Not just survival, but understanding. Not just coexistence, but cooperation." He looked down at their joined hands, human and Valerian, so different yet capable of working in perfect harmony. "It won't be easy. There will be resistance from both sides. Then we face it together," Nyla said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "As we did today." Above them, the first stars became visible through the forest canopy, distant worlds filled with possibilities and dangers. The rescue ship would arrive soon, bringing with it the complications of official contact between their civilizations. The power vacuum left by Sorix's death would trigger political upheaval among the Valerian tribes. The third-party aliens, their extraction operation destroyed, might return with greater forces. These were challenges for tomorrow. For now, as night embraced the healing forest, they simply existed in the moment of victory and possibility. No longer hunter and hunted, but allies facing an uncertain future with shared purpose and growing trust. The forest whispered around them, its consciousness awakening to new potential. Life flowed and ebbed and flowed again, an eternal cycle of death and rebirth, conflict and harmony. Within this cycle, they had found each other, transformed enemies into something neither had anticipated. The hunter had become protector. The hunted had become savior. And together, they had become something entirely new, a bridge between worlds, between understanding and ignorance, between exploitation and reverence. As Nyla's strength gradually returned and Marcus's scanner tracked the approaching rescue vessel, they watched the forest continue its healing journey. The darkness that had threatened to consume everything had been pushed back, if only temporarily. The light had prevailed, not through dominance, but through balance restored. It was enough. For now, it was enough.